At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Good morning. Welcome to the basketball show. I don't know what to say other than, everybody said it before. The madness is upon us. Most wonderful time of the year. My gosh. And it has not disappointed. Other than if people are looking for upsets, this has not been the year of big upsets. There have been some, but only a few. I'm your host, Paul Sir. I am glad to be joined by our show's producer, Ryan Reed. Ryan, good morning.
Good morning. And you're right, the madness is upon us. Not even just in March Madness, like an NBA. We still got the NBA in full swing, and
lots of storylines there.
Yeah,
lots of storylines in the NBA. And then we have Declan Kruger again agreeing to join us this morning and grace us with his presence. Declan, good morning.
Good morning, Paul. I wouldn't say I'm gracing anyone with my presence. I'm tagging along. I'm weighing you down more, if anything. Yeah, absolutely.
Ball and chaining with us, but that's
a little planes, trains, and automobiles of me when they're in the back of that truck there. But happy to be here. Love March Madness.
Planes, trains, and automobiles. The greatest single scene in the history of movie is Candy and Steve Martin going down the wrong side of the road. That is the greatest scene.
How does he know which way we're going?
That was,
I thought you were going to go with Those Aren't Two Pillows. That's another classic one.
It is filled with classics. And then another one, and this was great because my mom and dad, I rented the movie, had my mom and dad in the room. When Steve Martin walks up to the car rental counter and goes into his F-bomb laden tirade, Mom blushed a little bit and then started laughing hysterically. So it was a classic. But I digress. Let's talk basketball this morning. Ryan, first of all, our poll question.
It's just honestly a head-to-head matchup question. So we got Calipari versus Patino in Arkansas and St. John's. We're just asking on Basketball_Show who you have winning that matchup. It'll be a big matchup today. I'll get an exact time for you here. It's supposed to happen at 12:40 today. So we got McNeese State and Purdue in a couple minutes here starting up. And then, at Patino versus Calipari at 12:40 today. Go over on Twitter and answer and send your feedback in as well, and we'll read your answers.
It was really fun to watch Calipari being on a different team, getting away from Kentucky, and actually doing maybe one of the best jobs I've ever seen him do, Declan, in terms of his actual in-game coaching, because this is not an Arkansas team that has anything resembling the talent that he had in Kentucky. And Kansas was really spotty up and down this season under Bill Self. But boy, Calipari was engaged and the players responded.
Oh, absolutely. And John Calipari has to be going with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, right? Because he left Kentucky kind of in one of those situations that was like, listen, we're never going to fire you. The Blue Blood program, you've won a natty, but hey, maybe it's time to move on. Left kind of unceremoniously, goes to Arkansas with nowhere near the talent, nowhere near in this era what the NIL money is going to be like, and has done a decent job, we'll say, in the first season. And this Kansas team, I mean, what a bunch of underachievers. The Hunter Dickinson era, or experiment, if you want to call it that. He's obviously going to be done now, but just a failed timeline for that Kansas team.
Well, and Dickinson is an All-American.
Yes.
And I don't get that, because I agree. I think every time I watch Hunter Dickinson play, he's good.
Yes.
But he's underachieving. He never goes out with the competitive fire that you would expect from an All-American player.
He always looks content. Like, to me, Hunter Dickinson, when I watch him, and obviously I've never spoken to Hunter Dickinson. I'm also not watching 34 Kansas games a year. But to me, Hunter Dickinson has always been the guy who would rather get 20-12 and lose than get 8-2 and win.
I coached a lot of players like that. But he does have a great haircut.
He does.
And before the game, he said, I'm so pleased that I've got a great haircut from Sports Clips. That was one of his NIL deals that he just signed. So he did his Sports Clips, then goes out and loses.
Feels like he's been around forever, too. Like,
Oh, he has more. He has been. I mean, with the COVID year, like he's
all that time in Michigan,
he's milked it for all he can. And if he's an NBA guy, it'll be the 12th man on the bench.
He turned 25 this year.
Yeah, well, but that's what you're going to see, and we're going to get into that a bit later because the great Rick Pitino said, "I'm not recruiting high school kids.
Yeah.
I'm going after men. I want 22 to 26-year-olds on my team." We're going to talk about the effect on college basketball, what's going on. A couple of quick housekeeping things, though. Text line, 833-401-1440. Again, 833-401-1440. Give us your thoughts, comments, questions on March Madness. Love to hear from you. Congratulations to the 3x3 women, led by Catherine Plouffe from Edmonton, of course. Catherine is the number one ranked 3x3 player in the world, officially. Number one in the world. They went to Bangkok, Thailand, and won what was called the Champions Cup, which is all of the top teams, and I mean all, like 1 through 12, from last year, 2024, for the opening of the new 3x3 season, FIBA 3x3 season. They went and won. Paige Crozen, Casey Bosch from Lethbridge. Sasha, and I'm forgetting Sasha's name, from Toronto, who was the MVP as well. Michelle Plouffe went as a coach. She's still nursing a knee injury and working her way back, but congrats to the 3x3 women. We have a big announcement on Tuesday, by the way, at a press conference here in West Edmonton Mall about our Hoop City event coming up. Minister Scow, Councillor Principe are going to be there, so we're real excited to get that out in the public eye and rocking and rolling. Let's go to our three from deep from this morning. Guys, the beauty of the NCAA game was on full display, I think, over the last couple of days. And what really struck me once again was the difference between the NCAA and the NBA and international basketball. I was talking to someone and he stated it really well. It's like it's really like a warm cup of tea and a blanket to watch traditional basketball. Mm-hmm. You know, coaches heavily involved and engaged. Kids and fans completely wrapped up into it. A 30-second shot clock. Like, it just, calling timeouts in the middle of a possession. Like, all of those unique aspects. And one other thing, on the basketball side, it's the one brand of basketball where you see a tremendous range and variety in style of play. What do you guys think? Is it something you enjoy watching? Do you think they need to go more towards the international style to improve the game, or do you like it as it is? I'll start with you, Ryan.
I think I like it as it is. It's honestly kind of a tolerance break from the NBA. Like, it's just completely different than the NBA. And I think I saw someone on Twitter say this. It's paradoxical but true that it's worse basketball, so it's sometimes more entertaining. The players are worse at basketball, so it's more entertaining. It's paradoxical but true. And it is a tolerance break from the NBA. We watch NBA all season the same. It feels like a similar thing over and over and over again. You know, in college basketball, you have no clue what you're going to get sometimes. It's just kids running around, and something will happen, and it'll be entertaining.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, those are.
So I don't mind it how it is for right now. Just keeping it just kind of the Wild West and enjoying it for what it is.
Interesting comment. I'll come back to that, but I'm really interested in what you're thinking, Declan.
I agree with Ryan totally. And speaking about, the sanctity of basketball, if you want to call it that, like, I love the NCAA tournament when we're watching 40 minutes of a full court press, and when we're watching half court traps and things like that. Now, when we're watching a switch from man to zone defense in the middle of a play, like, I think it is basketball in the truest sense of the word. It is basketball that I love. And to Ryan's point, it's the same with college football. Like, you'll see these players who aren't as good make mistakes, and a college football game will end up like 63-56. In the NCAA, you don't quite have that. Maybe you just get a couple more brick shots, and boy, do you hear them when they are bricked. But it makes it so much more fun. And some of that's the unpredictability. Some of that is just the matchups, the youth, the style, things like that. I wouldn't change a thing about college basketball. In fact, I'd actually go as far as to say, if there was any sport at any level, NHL, MLB, Wimbledon tennis, whatever it is, that I don't want anything changed about, it's the NCAA.
Oh, you guys, you're really young guys, and yet you're smart. I'm a little shocked and taken aback. I was ready to make fun of both of you, and you didn't give me anything.
You thought we wanted to see LaMelo Ball, ISO ball.
Yeah, like
for
ISO
40
ball,
minutes.
one-on-one. Where's the
threes.
pick and roll? Yeah, they got to chuck more threes, which, by the way, the NBA is grappling with, and I have no idea how they're going to rein that in, because it is, for a lot of people, it's becoming unwatchable, and the numbers reflect that. But going back to the style of NCAA, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I mean, you're dealing with youth, and when you're dealing with 340-some Division I schools, much less all of the Division II, III, NAI Divisions 1 and 2, JUCOs, all of those things, that's a mammoth amount of basketball being played. I love the game. I love it for the reasons you guys just described. I love the variety and the contrast in styles. Everybody knows I'm an Iowa homer. Drake had one of the best examples of what college basketball is all about. A Division II coach takes over, brings 4 Division II players with him. One of those Division II players is the Missouri Valley Player of the Year, winning the Larry Bird MVP award. They win their first game since 1971, and they do it with Division II talent, and they do it by hard work, teamwork, unbelievable defense, and then using the 30-second clock, and they have the longest possessions in the country, making sure they don't get a shot until deep into the clock. So part of their defensive strategy is their offensive strategy. That's NCAA basketball. And that's why I love it, because now you're going to contrast that with some of the high-powered, high-octane, athletically driven teams that are going to try to run you off the court. And it just makes for a wonderful contrast in styles.
Without question, that Drake team, it's really interesting you bring them up. This is the reason I love them against Missouri. You talk about the pace. In Ken Palm, out of 364 qualified teams, they were 364th in tempo, last in the country. But that Missouri team was a decent, not great SEC team that plays in a conference, plays in a league that is a run and gun style. Like, they don't know how to play any other way. They didn't know how to play any other way. We saw that when Drake was able to settle it down and get into rhythm and get into half court sets, get into, running actual legitimate offenses. Missouri just looked flabbergasted out there. It was reflected in the final result. And Bennett Sturtz, I mean, my goodness, I know we were just slamming one-legged threes. He hit a one-legged three in that game. That kid's a stud. Anytime you're in a conversation with Larry Bird, you're doing something right. And what he's done for that Drake team in that conference fully deserves to be there.
Oh, 100%. And I agree with you. The Missouri team was in a very, very tough conference. Although, once again, when you put 13 teams into a tournament like the SEC did, you're going to have some duds along the way. But they have a lot of real good basketball teams in that conference. Georgia not being one of them, getting handled the way they did by Gonzaga. Good on Gonzaga, by the way. 100% excited for them. Nembhard being the point guard, breaking his brother's all-time assist record at Gonzaga. That's very cool for Canadian basketball fans. But I think anybody that's familiar with Gonzaga and the way that they have injected themselves over the last 20 years into the blue blood program bloodstream, it's an amazing story in a very special community like Spokane. Again, that's the magic of the NCAA, is you've got a whole different mindset, mentality, community focus, school focus. It is a business, never more so than now with NIL money and transfer freedom, just absolutely changing the landscape. One of the great comments, and Ryan, I get your opinion on this. One of the great comments is by coaches is, as soon as the season's over, I have to start recruiting my own players to make sure they stay, and then start going out and recruiting players from other teams. What a switch from 3 years ago.
We've touched on this in past shows, and yeah, exactly. It makes it free agency very real in men's basketball, and actually just in NCAA sports in general. But it makes it more. I think it takes some of the passion out of the game. I think we've kind of touched on that a little bit in past shows, but making it more about the money than the basketball. Obviously they need their money as they're making their colleges thousands and thousands of dollars. But it does
add
change.
some more zeros to that.
Millions of dollars, my bad.
Big zeros. Yeah, that's Austin Powers on that one. $1 million. So,
but it does change a little bit of the narrative of what the basketball is about at the end of the day, I think, a little bit, right?
Oh,
or maybe in large amount, especially with all the zeros.
And what's it going to look like 5 years from now? I'm really curious about this.
I wonder if players will ever do more years in college just to get more money than maybe their rookie deal would, even if it starts the timer for the big contract.
Not only that, one of the next expected possible lawsuits against the NCAA is years of eligibility. That's going to happen. Of why should the NCAA be able to dictate how many years you decide to play in college, creating a whole new strata of professional basketball. I want to get to something before we get to break, and I'm excited on the other side of the break because we're going to be bringing in the voice of the Oregon Ducks women's basketball program, who have a very prominent Calgarian on their team, and they really pulled off the only upset yesterday in women's basketball. Chris Clayton's going to join us. Declan, Selection Sunday happens, and there's a couple of just weird, glaring miscues, I think is a fair way to say it. The biggest one on the men's side would be North Carolina over West Virginia.
Yep.
Especially with the president of the selection committee who says, I wasn't in the room when it was selected, having North Carolina selected. I still am amazed because with analytics, with AI, you really should be able to get it pretty much right. And they really missed on that.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, the chair of the committee, a guy by the name of Bubba Cunningham, he is the athletic director at UNC. UNC was 1-12 in Quad 1 this year. They had a Quad 3 loss to Stanford. West Virginia, I know their record wasn't the prettiest, but they beat Kansas at Kansas. They had a win against Iowa State. Indiana was a team that had a better claim than
100%.
than UNC as well. So yeah, that was a gross misjustice of them getting into the field over some more deserving teams. But you look at the rest of it, like Louisville is an 8 seed, was ridiculous to me. Louisville finished the season 11-1. Their only loss was in the ACC championship game to Duke. I think they were ranked 14th in the AP poll. They come in as an 8 seed, and they have to play a really good Creighton team, who they obviously end up losing to. Michigan as a 5 seed. Michigan went 2-0 against Wisconsin this year and was 2-1 against Purdue. They won the Big Ten tournament. Purdue comes in as a 4 seed, Wisconsin as a 3, and Michigan as a 5 seed.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, it was a really Gonzaga as an 8 seed. They were a top 10 Ken Palm team. Like there was just a lot that didn't make sense. But to your credit, I mean the biggest miscarriage of justice. UNC 1-12 in Quad 1.
No justification. And that impossible to justify.
Yes. And the one win was UCLA. It's not like the one quad 1 win was Duke.
No,
it was UCLA.
I know. It was a gross injustice. And Ryan, on the women's side, we're not going to have a chance to see USC and UConn in the finals.
Yes,
because they're in the same regionals with 3 other top teams. Like, who in the world are these people that in 2025? Not only are missing what Declan laid out beautifully, but on the women's side, which is the game that's coming in, now we're going to be watching most likely a clash to go to the Final Four between these two powerhouses.
It's not only terrible from like just the teams being so good and being in the same spot. It's just like the marketing side of it, like the Juju Watkins, Paige Beckers aspect of it. You want that in the finals.
Oh my God, yes.
It's just gonna be like it's gonna be over in the Elite Eight. It's like, all right.
If you want any chance to duplicate what Caitlin Clark's numbers were last year, and they outdrew the men's final by 4 million viewers. We were looking up before we went on air, though, about the Larry Bird Magic Johnson game, which had a record of 40 million plus viewers compared to 18.
That one's going to stand for a while.
That's going to stand for a bit. That was the magic night. But anyway, Declan, thanks so much for joining us for this segment.
Always such a pleasure. Love being here. Thank you so much for asking me.
Well, you're a good teammate, so we appreciate that. Now get the hell out of here. So appreciate having Declan here. Ryan, great to have you. We're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, we're going to be speaking about women's basketball and the Oregon Ducks and the women's draw in general here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Great Alan Parsons project tune. Welcome back to the Basketball Show. Sports 1440, Paul Sir, along with Ryan Reed. Pleased to be joined by the voice of the Oregon Ducks women's basketball program, Chris Clayton. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on the program. It's been a crazy week here in Durham, North Carolina, but I appreciate it.
Well, a crazy week. I think it's so hilarious about the way regionals are designated and and the like. But the Oregon Ducks women's basketball pulled off probably what would be considered to be the big upset yesterday in the first round. Tell us about the game. Tell us about how the women were able to beat a very good Vanderbilt team.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think the one thing that's been a constant with this Oregon team this year, the defense has been so good. I mean, the offense is come and gone, to be honest, and the outside shooting hasn't always been there. But part of their identity that the Ducks have really embraced has been that they are a gritty defensive team. That's their identity. They don't have as much firepower as a lot of teams. But the shots were falling. I think it was kind of a perfect storm. The defense was playing well. The shots were falling, which they've had moments of it this year, but multiple players hitting shots all at the same time, including a freshman in Katie Fiso, who had one of her best games with a perfect 4-for-4 first half and 8 points. So I think that was big. And Vanderbilt has had a terrific season, but, they don't have a huge presence inside. So I think Oregon's mentality was trying to get the ball inside to Philly Che when they could, but Vanderbilt was doing a nice job clogging up the passing lanes, and Oregon was kind of forced to take some outside shots, and they were getting opportunities, and they took full advantage. So I think Oregon's experience, a lot of seniors on this team, really played into their favor because they were not afraid of the bright lights. They were fearless. They were shooting with confidence, and it really showed that they were not afraid of this moment. And I think that it can sound like a cliche, but I think that comfortability that an older team has playing in a key NCAA tournament game helped them. Now, it got interesting. Obviously, Vanderbilt made a big run, and Oregon missed a lot of free throws, but they built a big enough of a lead to hang on. It was an incredible game.
Well, what a special game for the fans, of course. I want to talk to you about what's coming up, of course. I want to talk to you about your first experience in the Big Ten. But let's talk about Philly Che. She's a Calgarian, and she's been very impactful on your program over the years she's played for the Ducks, hasn't she?
Yeah, she's look, in this era of college basketball, it is really rare to find a player that stays somewhere 4 years, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's just reality.
That loyalty
now.
is hard to find. You're right.
It is. And especially, let's be honest, freshman season for Philly Che, the Ducks make the NCAA tournament. But they go to the WNIT, and then last year was a tough year. Oregon lost 14 games in a row, and Philly saw most of her teammates around her transfer. So I think a lot of players in Philly Che's shoes would have really strongly considered transferring because, at 6'8", what she's brought to the table as an honorable mention all Pac-12 selection last season, she averaged 12 points and 11 boards. I think a lot of players would have at least put their foot in the portal, see what's out there. There would have been a lot of suitors, but she never wavered. She didn't even think about transferring, as far as my conversations with her and with Ducks head coach Kelly Graves, is she knew she was coming back. In fact, she was a key role in recruiting players to Oregon. Oregon ends up bringing in 7 transfers, and Philly was right there every step of the way. She said this offseason she spent a lot of time in the coach's office, a part of those planning meetings, part of the recruiting pitches and the breakfasts with potential not just freshmen, but, transfers that Oregon brought in. So beyond what she's done on the court, off the court, she is a huge beacon for this Oregon program. And I think this season they feel like it's kind of a resurgence back to where they want to be, after the glory era and the runs in the postseason with Sabrina Ionescu and company. To be able to get back to the NCAA tournament and win a game here is huge. And Philly Che is a huge part of that. And there was a few shots that she missed that she would want back in this game against Vanderbilt, but huge rebounding presence and a huge off-the-court presence for this program that, if you hear Kelly Graves talk about Philly Che, he is just so proud of not just what she's done on the court, which is top 5 rebounder in Oregon Ducks history, approaching quickly 1,000 career points. She might be able to get there, especially if Oregon can upset Duke. But he's just so proud of what she's become off the court. He said she was kind of quiet. She was kind of unsure of herself. She's admitted in interviews that maybe she was a little bit self-conscious about her height, but she's grown so much as a person in her 4 years at Oregon. She's in student teaching. She wants to teach kids one day when she's done playing basketball. And I just think, like you said, loyalty, something you don't see that much in college basketball. And Philly Shea represents everything that's right still about college sports.
Everything that's right about college sports. And I'll tell you, that's an interesting phrase, isn't it, in today's landscape? Right. And I'm talking with Chris Clayton, the voice of the Oregon women's basketball team here on the Basketball Show on Sports 1440. Chris, talk about, if you would, comment on what you see in how the women's basketball game is evolving, given that we're in this new era of free-flowing transfer. The doors are thrown wide open. You've got NIL money flowing in a way that I don't know that anybody expected, and how quickly it's become a part of the women's game along with the men's game, I think is great, but also really changes the landscape. What are your observations?
It's crazy, man. It really is. It's way different, and it's. I think, to be honest, as a coach at this level, not myself, but if I'm talking about a coach, you have to embrace it. It's just reality, and it's been interesting. I think Kelly Graves is a very interesting case study into how much the game has changed, because he's been coaching a long time. He's a 28th year head coach. And he actually talked to Oregon football head coach Dan Lanning in kind of a therapeutic way, I guess, just asking him how he deals with it, how he embraces it. And he also talked to the men's head coach at Oregon, Dana Altman. And those two have really embraced the transfer portal. And Kelly Graves, I think he admitted for a while he was kind of against it. He wanted that classic Philly Shea loyalty where he has a player 4 years, he sees them develop, and he has that continuity. But he just kind of, after the tough season last year, he kind of understood it. Look, I got to embrace this. I got to adjust to it, or it's going to be hard, because the best players out there on the market are pursuing NIL deals, and they're pursuing other schools. And you can't – he said one thing he pointed to is, he said, you can't take it personally. If a player chooses to transfer, it doesn't mean – they hated their time in Eugene. It doesn't mean they hate the coaches. It didn't mean they had a bad time. It's a reality of the sport now. It's a huge business aspect of it. So, to think big picture, you just look at a guy like Kelly Graves who's been coaching for a long time, and he's made a commitment to understanding that you can't just go after high school players anymore. You have to go after those transfers, and you have to embrace NIL money. And, I think – Oregon's made an emphasis and an effort to keep those negotiations with players, with the collectives, so that, everybody's aware of how much these players are making, but there's a layer of separation so that it doesn't feel transactional. So I think that's the question right now. That's the focus for college sports, in the women and in the men's game, to me, is you still want it to be a development of these young people. I mean, these are kids. These are 18 to 22-year-olds for the most part. So you still want them to have that, that guidance and the kind of parental role, in a way, almost, of some of the coaches. And you've got to find a way to be able to do that while paying these players. And it's complicated. There's no easy answer. But the reality is, if you want to win as a coach, then you have to embrace that NIL landscape and the transfer landscape. And I think Oregon's done a great job of that. Arguably Oregon's best player, Deja Kelly, was one of the most sought after transfers in the country. And Oregon's able to get her to come over to Eugene from UNC, and it worked out well for them. So I guess, kind of a rambling answer, but I guess long story short, if you don't embrace it, the world will pass you by. So that's how you maintain a winning program.
Well, I think, Chris, a rambling answer is the right answer, because there's no straight line anymore. It's a very windy road. Lots ups and downs and hairpinned corners. I'm talking to Chris Clayton, voice of the Oregon Ducks women's basketball program here on the Basketball Show. Chris, tell me about your experience in the Big Ten. I mean, I'm an old guy. Been around basketball my whole life. I'm from the state of Iowa, Big Ten country. What was the Big 8 country before all of the changes? But the Big Ten, number one with 80 teams in it, but the Big Ten, Oregon, UCLA, USC. What was the experience like for your team this year? A, the travel, but B, style of play, Big Ten versus Pac-12, so different. What was the net experience of this season overall?
Well, first of all, with on-court play, I'll start there. I think there was this idea when, and I'm just speaking from a women's basketball perspective, that, it's the Big Ten, right? Big Ten country, it's going to be physical, it's going to be tough. Well, actually, a lot of teams in the Big Ten, the traditional ones, turned out to be kind of 4-out, even 5-out outside shooting teams. A lot of great three-point shooting teams. So I think maybe it's just where we were out on the West Coast, the initial idea was, okay, they're going to be really big and tough and physical inside. And that's to say, I'm not saying they're not physical, but there's more of there's a lot of great three-point shooting teams. So that was something to adjust to. In the Pac-12, there was a lot more traditional centers across the board, across the game-to-game basis. So I think that was kind of an interesting aspect of it, was the prolific three-point shooting that is really difficult to defend, and Oregon had to get used to. But the travel is something that was hard. To be honest, I think Oregon really did their best to not make it a big deal. They didn't go into these road trips really hammering it home and bringing it up to the players, because Kelly Graves, his phrase is, if you make it a big deal, then it is a big deal. So he's not going to complain about it too much. But, I can see firsthand some of these road trips, there's 5-6 days. That's a long time on the road for these student athletes. For example, you make a trip all the way over to State College, Pennsylvania for a Big Ten game, and you go over to Columbus, Ohio, and you play that game and you fly home. That ended up being a 6-day road trip across multiple time zones. That's a lot. And these kids are still in school. They have obligations still back home they have to deal with. And anybody listening to this that's traveled for work before knows it's not a vacation. It can be tiring. It can be wearing, jumping on planes. And I think Oregon had a lot of road success this year. They deserve a lot of credit. And I think that maybe helped them here in this trip to North Carolina. I think one thing to bring up and to mention that they deserve credit for is they actually had major plane issues flying in here to Durham, and their flight got delayed like 5-6 hours. They didn't get into town, and I'm not sure this is even public or anything, but I'll just say it. They didn't get into town here until about 3 a.m. local.
Wow.
They got to the hotel after 3 a.m. And here I am thinking, oh man, I actually flew separate this time, but I'm thinking, they're going to be tired. They're going to be this. No, they got up, they took it in stride, and they were totally mature and professional about it. I was wildly impressed. And even if they lose that game to Vanderbilt, I still would have said the same thing, how well they handled everything. And I think the wear and the adversity, if you will, if that's how you want to describe it, of the Big Ten travel kind of helped them prepare for it. They probably thought to themselves, we've done this before, we've been here before, it's a business trip, let's take care of it. And I think this team deserves a lot of credit for their maturity and professionalism with that.
Well, Chris, you've articulated really well about what ultimately you hope the college basketball experience is for young men and women, is that they're going to leave with great memories on the court, but with life skills off the court. And what you're describing to me is exactly that. We're very proud of Philly and what she's doing, being from Alberta, and really thrilled that you're talking to our Canadian listeners about this experience. And you do a great job on the broadcast. We're really excited about your upcoming game against a very powerful Duke team. And we'll see if the Ducks, which of course is one of the great names in college basketball, but we'll see how the women Ducks are ready to go. And thanks so much, Chris, for making time for me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And everybody should be proud of Philly Che there. She's just an incredible person, great player, and always an X factor for Oregon. It's not just being 6'8", but her approach to the game, the way she approaches things. And obviously hoping she's got an opportunity against Duke. They're not the biggest team in the world, so she could have a big game ahead. But again, thank you so much.
Chris, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the madness, safe travels, and I really look forward to having you on again.
Yes, sir. Love it. Thank you so much.
Chris Clayton, voice of the Oregon women's basketball team, joining us, giving us a courtside look at the March Madness on the women's side. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to be talking NBA for the next segment. Then at the top of the hour, we'll go back to the Madness conversation with Kevin Lehman, voice of the Missouri Valley Conference, here on the Basketball Show on your sports leader, Sports 1440. Welcome back to the Basketball Show. You know what? Ryan, I didn't want to jump in there. I wanted to get to the I Know It's Only Rock and Roll. That's such a great song by the Stones. Basketball Show, Saturday morning, Sports 1440. Paul Sir, joined by Ryan Reed. Ryan, it was interesting talking with Chris Clayton from the Oregon women's basketball team. He did such a great job of encapsulating their school's experience, their team's experience, the switch to the Big Ten, and what it's like in the NCAA. But we talked about Philly Shea. Philly, for those of you who don't know, 6'8" from Calgary, has had an outstanding career as Chris laid out, at Oregon. Loyalty in an era where that is rare. And again, that's not derogatory. It's just rare for someone to stay. The other interesting player, though, who was honorable mention All-American, who also is from Calgary, is named Yvonne Edgem, who's had a record-breaking career, awards galore at Gonzaga. They're in the women's NIT right now. She just had a 23-16 performance in a victory yesterday for the Zags. And Yvonne also stayed for her entire career at Gonzaga. And the benefits of that are intangible because they're not necessarily related to where you could go get the most money, Ryan. But you've got Yvonne as one of the leading scorers, if not the leading scorer, in Gonzaga women's basketball history. Philly approaching 1,000 points and will leave a legacy in a school. And that, I think, is one of the advantages, along with getting a great education at a quality institution, the contacts you made, the relationships that you form, and the growth that you have both as a person and as a player. So kudos to those two women who have represented our province so well. And if you ever have met either Yvonne or Philly, you'll know exactly what I mean. They are just wonderful people, like genuinely wonderful people. So very, very happy for both of them. And who knows, maybe Oregon will find a way it will be really tough because Duke is good. Very good. But yesterday, another near miss upset was Liberty, the women's Liberty program, losing by 1 to a very strong Kentucky program, who in many respects, Ryan, remind me of Duke in their ability to shoot the three and run and gun. And they don't have a 6'8" center like Philly. So it's going to be really exciting. Let's jump over, Ryan. Let's talk about the NBA. Cavs have lost 4 in a row. What are your thoughts?
Not quite panic button level. However, it is something to worry about maybe come playoff time. Like what's going wrong? They lost to the Kings the other day. That's the one I kind of want to focus on as a Kings fan myself, if you don't know. It feels like it's well documented at this point.
Yes, Iowa and Kings. I think that we were pretty well pegged.
However, the Kings did not have Zach LaVine or Domantas Sabonis in the game or Jake LaRavia. He's obviously not that level of player, but he's still a very talented player. The Cavs lost to the Kings, and it kind of shows the parity that you'd like in the NBA. But at the same time, if you're a Cavs fan, you're probably like, what's going on here? We lost 4 in a row. It's worrisome right now. However, I think it's being blown out of proportion maybe a little bit. I think they will be fine eventually. They'll win a couple rounds of the playoffs. It didn't affect my vision for them in the playoffs. I think they're probably a conference finals exit, probably to the Celtics is what I'd say. That did not affect how far I think they'll go. It's worrisome, though.
It is. Well, what's interesting about it is they just came off a 16-game winning streak. When you think of the emotional toll that it takes in the NBA to win 16 games in a row, that, and they've had a couple of 10-plus game winning streaks this year. The Cavs have had a remarkable regular season. But we have said since the beginning, and most people who understand the sport in general, but basketball specifically, always agree it's a game of streaks, it's a game of runs. It depends on injuries, but it also depends on emotions. And when you have a long 82-game season and you're trying to focus your time and attention to playing at your absolute peak over that length of time in that many games, that's difficult to sustain. And for a team like Cleveland, who lacks playoff experience, is a young team, people have noted what their weaknesses might be, particularly on the wing. But that when they get to the playoffs, will this Cleveland team be one of those footnotes in history that had the remarkable regular season but weren't ready for the playoffs or were even burnt out when playoffs came? That's what's going to be interesting, I think, about the remainder of the season. Can they right themselves, regain their swagger, and be able to go into the playoffs with confidence? Or is this a sign that they have been playing so great and now they're starting to have some team self-doubt?
I think it's important to look at the grand picture as well, right? Like if you tell any team you can win 16 of 20 games, they'll be ecstatic about it.
100%.
Right? So, of course, they lost 4 in a row, but they also, as you mentioned, won 16 prior to that.
Right.
I think looking at the greater sample size is important when it comes to these kind of things. And it is still obviously important. It's important to look at certain things and fix things that you can fix. But I feel like the grand scheme is the most important thing to judge, especially in the regular season. Because things will not go your way for a week, and that's just the way it is.
So true. Now, you had a text you were saying at the break, Ryan. Let's hear it. Yeah.
Make sure to text us 833-401-1440. We'll read some of the better comments in March Madness. We go about NBA. It could be whatever you want. Wolfpack texted in saying, Paul, my daughter is on the track team at Mount St. Mary's. Talking basketball through the last couple of weeks has been great. For a small school to win their conference, then their first 4 game and get to play Duke, even though they got blown out, it was huge. He loves college basketball, he says. Wolfpack.
Well, I'll tell you what. Number one, congratulations to your daughter for being the kind of athlete who can go to a Division I school and compete at that level. Like, you've got to be so proud, as you should be. So please pass that on to your daughter. And number two, how exciting is it for this team to be able to compete at that level? Like, that is really, really special. It doesn't matter that they lost or they got to the dance. That's the dream, is to get to the dance no matter what, and to be able to be a part of that, what that creates. And it's something, honestly, I still feel badly for. And that's the best way I can describe my emotions for the university level basketball teams in Canada. Is I just feel we missed something culturally for the experience of these young people, because we don't embrace college sport in the way it deserves to be embraced in Canada at both the university and the college levels. Because, like, for instance, the University of Calgary, just on the men's side, they had the Player of the Year. We've had on our program before on the men's side for youth sports. They finished with a silver medal, losing to the University of Victoria. And that was Nate Petrone, by the way, who was the Player of the Year from Calgary and National Player of the Year. But you don't hear anything about it. And the attendance at the championship games are just so-so. Very limited TV coverage. It's there, but it's very limited. We just are doing our athletes a disservice. So I'm really happy for your daughter that she's having the experience that she's having south of the border. Let's jump back to the NBA, Ryan. We're going to do a couple of quick hits here. DeMar DeRozan, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is he's playing for your beloved Kings now, but of course most of the 25,000 points that he just crossed that threshold on this past week were scored with the Raptors. He was such a quality man, has been very public about his personal struggles with mental health issues. I just think the world of DeMar, and he's playing really well for the Kings.
One of the most underrated scorers ever. He's averaged 20 points per game for 12 consecutive years, which is, if you think about it in the NBA, if you average 20 points a game, you are one of the better scorers in the league. Now imagine doing it for 12 consecutive years, almost a decade and a half of that scoring prowess. And in that span, making All-NBA teams. He's made 3 All-NBA teams in his life, 2 with the Raptors, and then 1 with the Bulls in his first season there. It's been a pleasure to watch with the Kings this year, especially with De'Aaron Fox being traded out of town and Sabonis missing a lot of time. DeMar's been the consistent for us. He's also had a couple games where he's had 40 or more, and I think he had 40. I think he had 47. I think in overtime one game, and his mid-range has been well documented. But if you ever get a chance to watch multiple DeMar DeRozan's games now, its mid-range is even. I think it's even better than it was.
I totally agree.
He's lost some of his athleticism, right? So he has to kind of more rely on that shooting ability, and his three-pointer this season has been the best of his career, which is maybe not saying much, but he's shooting 36% from three, which for him has been pretty good.
That's respectable. There's a lot of players that shoot 36, 37, 35%, and DeMar's one of them. I am a big fan of DeMar DeRozan's. Of DeRozan. I have a huge amount of respect for him as a human being. I always have, if hindsight could be 20/20, I wish Masai Ujiri would have been able to make other moves around DeMar and have been able to win a championship in Toronto. And a lot of people say that would have never happened with him. It could only have happened with Kawhi. And you know what? You're right, because that's what did happen. Kawhi was gone, or Kawhi came, they won a championship. Then he was gone. That's the thing that they lost, though. They have really degraded since then. And with DeRozan, he would still be playing in Toronto gladly today. I really felt he should have been a player they built around and tried to find the pieces to accentuate his great mid-range scoring. I believe it could have been done, but then again, who am I? And all we know is that Toronto has that championship trophy, which is what they want, but I'm a huge fan of DeMar DeRozan.
Could you play devil's advocate there and say they tried to build around him for
absolutely.
10 years?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It was never really able to work because they ran into a man named LeBron James every year?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can't argue, hey, they won a championship. Ujiri deserves all the credit for that. A couple of other quick things. I would say it's safe to say right now the path is pretty much clear now for SGA to be the MVP in the league, with Jokic having an injury, keeping him out of multiple consecutive games. A lot of concern about this ankle that's hurt, and making sure that he gets healthy and gets ready for the playoffs. So I think they're going to forego rushing him back in order to prepare him for the playoffs, because he's had shoulder problems. He's had to carry such a workload this year to keep the Nuggets competitive, which, by the way, when he's out, they are not anymore. But so it's a tribute to Jokic's greatness. But I think more than that, it's SGA's remarkable season and the way that the Thunder continue to roll opponents. It's very, very impressive. So we're going to have another Canadian as an MVP at the end of this particular season. A couple of other just quick NBA points that I would touch on. Celtics sold for $6.1 billion, the largest dollar.
I was in the bidding, but I just was like, maybe not this time.
I was hoping, Ryan, you were going to pick it up, but iconic franchise. It's just the numbers are so staggering. You just can't even believe it. And what's so interesting is nobody really even knows who the purchaser was. He's a silent billionaire. As far as the rest of the league, the Raptors almost beat Golden State the other night. Unfortunately, Steph Curry went out with what's been called a pelvic injury. And there's a lot of concern now about his health going into the playoffs. That would be a real shame if Steph wasn't healthy enough to be a real factor in the playoffs, because I'll tell you what, Ryan, since the acquisition of Jimmy Butler, they have been tough.
9-1 in their last 10 are what the Warriors are looking at right now, and have a legitimate chance to rise up until the 3, 4, 5 seed. Right now they are the 6th seed, and they could actually just as easily fall into the play into this. They're only one game up on the 7 and 8 seed, the Clippers and the Timberwolves respectively, but they're also only 2 or 3 games down from the Lakers.
It's really exciting to have both in the East and the West as you get down into the playoff picture. It's really exciting to have this many teams in the running, and the meaningfulness, if that's even a word, of the last games of the regular season, how that's going to position them for the playoffs. It could radically change in both the East and the West, Ryan.
I think the difference is, though, the West is just so much better depth-wise. Like, if you look at the play-in here, the Timberwolves are 41 and 31. The Kings are 35 and 34, and the Suns are 34 and 37. Pop over to the East. Their 8 seed is the Magic. They're 33 and 38. The Bulls are 9 at 30 and 40. The Heat are 29 and 41 at the 10 seed, and the Wizards were only mathematically eliminated today, and they're 40 games under 500. They're only mathematically eliminated today. They're half a season under 500.
It's unbelievable how bad they are, and the East has had a rough year. Top 6 are fun. Below that, wow, it drops off. And my comment wasn't based on how good the teams were. It was more based on the fact that these bad teams were close in the East, in jockeying for position.
The Raptors
in the playoffs.
might sneak in.
My God, would that be awful? Wouldn't that be awful if they snuck in, got into the playoff game, lost in the first round, and diminished their opportunity to get a high draft pick? You know, of course, everybody wants Cooper Flagg, but to get a high-quality draft pick because they limp their way into the playoffs, it would just...
It might work. It might happen, too, because the Heat have lost 10 in a row.
What a meltdown. What an absolute...
I don't know. They're only 5 games up on the Raptors. The Raptors might get in there.
Here's what amazes me about the Heat, because you have the Pat Riley culture. Eric Spoelstra has been there forever. They've got it's similar to San Antonio. You've got a great program there, but it has just absolutely imploded on them this year. Butler's behavior, bringing in Wiggins, who's been hurt, and when he's been playing hasn't been effective. Bam Adebayo isn't that good. Tyler Hero's good, but not great. They're just not a very good. They're not a very good basketball team at all anymore. So they're limping in, and I would venture to guess they won't be in the playoffs unless something real dramatic happens.
And they'd have to win
Miami.
2 play-in games too. Like, even if it started today, they'd have to win 2 play. And they're on the, as you mentioned, on a downward trend. And who knows?
Yeah, I guess a tailspin would be called a downward trend. Yeah, they're just absolutely.
That's putting it lightly, probably, but
yeah. No, they're nosediving, but that's why an 82 regular season is so hard. The ebbs and flows, the injuries, the streaks, the emotions, the mindsets, everything just factors in, and everything gets exaggerated over the course of an 82-game season. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Kevin Lehman once again. Kevin is a longtime voice of men's college basketball, and we're going to break down the men's March Madness brackets. When we get back, you're listening to the Sports on Sports 1440, to the Basketball Show.